Welcome back to another episode of the Focus In podcast, where we discuss photography and technology. And I'm your host, Ethan. First off, I would like to ask everybody, how have you been? I believe I missed last week. I think so. I missed last week, but I've just had a lot going on. But I'm back. I'm back this week, so that's good. I don't know if you realize, just a little quick announcement. I have a new podcast cover. The one I used originally, it wasn't bad, but it could definitely use some work. So I worked on it, and now here I am. I think it looks really great. It fits, the colors and everything. I just love it. It kind of brings out the vibe that I wanted. Because when I started the podcast, it was something just really quick and easy to do. Because Spotify podcasts, their service, it actually has it built in. So that's what that's what I used. So I hope you enjoy the new podcast cover. But today we have another interesting topic. Where would I actually like to travel to take pictures? For years I've sat down and I've pondered this question, and there's so many places in the world, and I picked two places that everybody kind of knows, and one place that it's not obscure but other people know. I feel like when it comes down to taking photography or taking photography, taking pictures in different places, the usual suspects always come up, and there's nothing wrong with them. You can always find your way around, but I feel like there's just other places I can take these pictures and, get the magic of, because you see some pictures online and then you look at them and you're like, "Oh, where's that?" And it's like, here's this very obscure location that nobody really knows of. I'm not going to be discussing a lot of them today. I'm only going to pick like my top 3, and my first one is New York. New York. New York, New York, New York. I've always considered New York the Japan of the United States, if that makes any sense. They have a lot of things in common. And I think one of those things are the density of Japan and New York. To be more specific, in Japan, I'm speaking more towards Tokyo, since that's more the more city part of it, and then New York City, but we're talking about New York right now. New York has its own magic. New York is very, 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 very dense with people. There's people all over the place. There's people everywhere. And New York just has its like these boroughs. And then they have Manhattan, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, and how can I forget New York City itself? Even though they're all in the same state, those boroughs have like their own distinct culture. Somebody says they're from Queens, they're different from somebody who's from, the Bronx. And I think that's really cool. And I think that's one of the things I want to capture, just like the raw, not emotions, but the raw, image of what New York is. And I guess the perfect terminology to go along with this is the good, the bad, and the ugly. I really want to capture that, because I feel like those are things that people should really see when it comes down to New York. Everybody just sees, oh, NYC, the city part of it, Times Square, but I feel like we should really be capturing like these boroughs, like I said, Manhattan, the Bronx, Brooklyn. And I think they also have really cool names. Like, how cool it is to kind of say like you're from the Bronx or you're from Queens. Like, that's really cool to hear. I'm not even gonna lie. But there's probably some New Yorker out there who's probably listening to this and is gonna correct me on that. So I'm looking forward to that. I also think another aspect of New York is just the cities or city, New York City. There's a lot of buildings there, and I feel like if you really want to like practice your symmetry in your photography in terms of composition, I think taking go to New York for that reason would really help. And that's why I want to go. There's just so much to see, so many lights, and you know, New York is never asleep. That's one thing I can say. New York is never asleep. It's always there, and I think that's what keeps it alive. And there's so many other reasons. Like I want to capture the train. I want to capture people, and like I said, just the cities, the skylines, and all that. I think that's the magic of New York. It's the backbone, and like you can't have New York without those things. It's just it all work together. So that's why I would like to take pictures in New York. So Next place I would love to check out is Japan. I know Japan has a very they're very questionable when it comes down to outsiders. I'll say that. I'm not going to go into specifics, but they're very questionable when it comes down to outsiders. And I feel like with Japan, it's kind of the same reasons for New York, but it's a different culture this time. There's a lot of things in Japan that are just different, and I feel like I can capture those things. And Japan to me has one of the richest cultures when you sit down and actually do your homework. But not a lot of people do that. So they just sit there and they're like, oh, Japan, and Japan, they know Japan for anime, gaming, or tech, and all these things. But I feel like a lot of people forget like the actual culture behind Japan as to why it's so important and special. So, many people flock to the Torii Gates, which I think are one of the many aspects of Japan. They have their own atmosphere. And like I said, Japan has like different parts to it itself. Like we have Tokyo, Akihabara, Shinjuku. I believe that's one of them. I think there's another one that starts with S, but yeah, those are definitely one of the places, that I would love to check out because, like I said, it's like how New York has boroughs. Like Japan has different parts to it, and I feel like that's what all makes up Japan. And I love to travel all over the place because you definitely want to get that experience. But in terms of photography, like I said, it's the same thing. You want to capture those beautiful towers, and I feel like, in my opinion, New York and Japan are very colorful places. Like it's hard to get monotone in there. There's always a bright red here, a pink there, or something. A gray or white here. So there's always something that's special about it, and I feel like that's what I want to do. I very much would like to capture that magic of Japan and that magic of New York. Yeah, definitely. I would love to go to Akihabara because it's electronic haven. A lot of people say, any electronics, any games you want, you can get it from there, and you kind of want to capture that because there's always things to see, and you're never bored when you go to these places, and that's what I like about it. And I think to an extent, this is gonna sound really contradicting to what I just said, but I feel like New York and Japan, at the very least, are very overrated. They're not bad, but I think they're overrated because everybody goes there and everybody gets their pictures there, and it's not bad. I'd love to go there too, but I want to capture something unique that isn't just, you know, that isn't just the usual things that people catch. Like I said, I do want to catch people in skylines, and there's definitely millions of photos on the internet with, you know, people in skylines, but I want to capture it for myself and say, hey, this is what I got, and this is my experience with my camera and during this time. The last place that I want to talk about, I recently saw this in one of Koki Yamaguchi's videos. It wasn't really recent. It was a few months ago, but he went to, I believe, Iceland. And I feel like it's kind of unique to me at the very least. It's obscure. You don't really hear a lot about Iceland. It's everybody knows it. Everybody knows where it is, but not a lot of people go. As far as I know, I could be wrong, but I don't really see a lot of photography there. And I mean, you're obviously gonna get pictures, but I don't see a lot of photography there. And in Iceland, I'm basing this all off of like what I've seen in Koki Yamaguchi's video. Their culture is diverse too. It's great. But I feel like you can capture a lot of structural things, but it's more natural than anything. If you go far out enough. Like I said, I think those were the things that contrast New York and Japan, which is why I added it to this list, is because it's more natural. Everything is naturally formed, water, you know, the I was gonna say temperature, but I mean I am temperature is natural, but at the same time though, you know, how everything is just formed there, they have the rocks, the mountains, and I think they have like a pink salt or something. I think they have something on their beach, black or pink. I don't know, and I could be wrong about that. So um take that with a grain of salt. No pun intended. Um yeah, Iceland is definitely one of those places I would love to go and see because I think it's just really cool and I'd love to go there and explore other places. No, there's definitely other places I would love to go, but I had to pick a top three. And in all honesty, it wasn't easy. There's so many places I want to go. Like I definitely want to go to Paris, France, and I've seen one of Ryan Tran's videos and went to Amsterdam, and I think that's pretty cool too. everywhere in the world has its own distinct culture, and I think that's what matters the most. Everywhere is just something, cool, and they're like, hey, we have our own thing too. And I feel like you can really capture that art with cameras, and I think that's one of the, in a way, blessings of being a photographer. You get to capture, that, and bend it to your will and make it your thing and make it unique to you. When you do when you do what everybody else does, it's just for lack of better words, it's just lame. It's not the best, but I just feel like, there's so many places around the world that I just feel like, deserve to be mentioned. But, you know, I really do want to travel. And one of these days, I'm going to achieve that dream. In some way, somehow, I'm going to travel to all the places I want to go. And that's really it. So, this week's episode was brought to you by my wonderful team here at Focus In. I would like to shout out my writer and editor. They do an amazing job every week, and I want to make sure their work doesn't go unnoticed. Make sure to follow my page on Twitter/X and Instagram. I post my photography there bi-weekly, so please support me. Also, don't forget to share the podcast with your family and friends so we can have a greater outreach. Until next time, Focus In.